And thank you for having me. I'm grateful. Hi, everybody. I'm honored to be here. I got my start as a wilderness guide, but also as an EMT, and was raised by a lot of nurses. And so I appreciate always having an opportunity to focus and speak to folks like yourselves in this room that work in very difficult circumstances, often without a lot of acclaim. I want to get right into it. I'm going to be telling you some stories. They're not war stories, they're stories with a purpose. And I'm also going to be teaching you some skills. But I want to give you some background about what my focus is and on why. Over the last almost 20 years now, I've had the privilege to work with some of the most elite teams in the world. And these are some of them. So special operations, as was described. Also, I sit on the board to help select NASA flight directors. And I work with the Secret Service and a bunch of other organizations. And all of it is trying to figure out, how do we teach people to navigate uncertainty? How do we help people zig when they should zag, right? How do we help people be more successful and sustainable in the work that often puts us in very, very difficult environments? What I'm realizing and have realized for the last 20 years is that often where we focus, which is on the tools and techniques, isn't often what gets us in trouble. What gets us in trouble is our inability sometimes to make meaning of extreme experiences. And part of that is because we often lack a language in which to describe these experiences that we're having, because they're in many cases not normal, or what the rest of the world would call normal. So to do my research, I started in 2007, and what I did was I basically followed teams around as they were training instructors. I spent a lot of time with the FDNY going into burn buildings, but also going into burning buildings with folks like Chief Pfeiffer and Chief Sweeney. I spent a bunch of time in pen trauma, and then a little bit of time in shock trauma, observing teams, just trying to understand how they navigate uncertainty, how they work together, and then a lot of time in military shoot houses. And the one story that I tell that sort of help explain this is, I was with a team and I'm in a shoot house like that, and a 4-man team comes in the building. It's live fire. I look like a 6-foot-tall gopher. I have body armor and a helmet and eye pro and ear pro, and I look like I do not belong. I happen to be standing beside an 8-foot-tall Navy SEAL, about 4 feet wide. It just looked like he just lifted heavy things for a living. And he had explained to me that he wished I'd go away, so our relationship was still evolving. And I was there to study how they developed the most elite team in the world. Just ask them. That's a joke I like to say about them because they're my friends. And this 4-man team comes in, and this guy, excuse my language, they say, feedback on number 1 man on the stack there. And this guy next to me, this Neanderthal, this silverback gorilla, spits chew into a Red Bull cup with his big beard and sleeve tattoos and says, "Hey, douchebag, you suck less." And then leans back, and all his buddies were like, nailed it, that was good, keep that up. And I'm there with my notepad because I'm trying to get a doctorate studying under how people, teach people to navigate uncertainty. And I'm like, man, that was super unhelpful. That was unhelpful because that candidate knew they sucked, and sucking less is what they're actually trying to do. So the question is, how do we do that better? And it turns out that that's called the tacit knowledge transfer problem. And what that means is simply that you have a lived experience that you're unable sometimes to articulate. I'll give you an example and make it real. If I put a bicycle up here, if I rode a bicycle up here and I said to you all, hey, I've never ridden a bike, and you give me the safety briefing, helmet, gloves, whatever it is, but you've taken the training wheels off, it's my time to actually start pedaling. What advice would you give me? Just shout it out. What advice would you give me to ride that bike? Don't fall, I heard. What else? So, yeah, get on and pedal is basically what we're coming up with. 100 years of bicycles. Bicycles are in every country on the planet, and the best we can do is get on and pedal. The question is, why is that? It has to do with the fact that bicycling is a habitual exercise that involves autonomic nervous system reactions, habits that you developed that you don't have direct access to. And so one of the big problems is that how do we actually develop a language when it comes to things like you're handing a resident a scalpel for the first time, or you're handing a law enforcement a gun for the first time? How do you take intellectual stuff and make it real so that we keep everybody alive? But it's not just the skills that are problematic. And in order to do that, I have to explain something to you. So over the last 20 years, one of the things that people don't talk about is that I've had to bury a lot of my friends. That was the one thing I didn't anticipate. The one thing when I started this research is how many of my friends that helped me start this research are no longer with us. And they were killed in many cases by war, but not in combat. They were killed by what happened after they came home. They couldn't figure out how to make meaning of the event. And for me, what I cannot understand in America, in the United States of America, when we have a Declaration of Independence says that we have an inalienable right to pursue happiness, why you all in this world are being asked to choose to be of service to your community or your country, and in doing so, you choose not to pursue happiness. Why are we making that choice? Why are we all just comfortable that that's a thing? That if you're going to be a female surgeon or a doctor, that your suicide rate will go 4 times as high as an average female. Why have we accepted that? Everyone in this room has a right to pursue happiness, but no one's coming to rescue you because you are the rescuers. So the question is, what tools can we give you to better navigate these experiences, better make meaning of these experiences? Because one of the most dangerous sentences you'll ever hear in your community is, I don't understand. After something happens, after you have your bad day, and you know what I mean by that, after you have your bad day, if you hear somebody saying, or you saying, I don't understand why I did that, why they did that, why that happened, why we did that. If what they're saying is they can't make meaning of it. They can't put it somewhere. And so they're stuck with this. They're stuck with this thing they can't put down. And over time, as we'll see in this talk, that builds up and that hurts you. But if you have a way that you can start putting a language to it, that you can start articulating it, be able to tell your story, then suddenly, instead of being the thing that clogs your soul and makes it so you can't breathe, it's the fuel that feeds your wisdom, that makes you a better grandparent. It is this choice between stimulus and response, as Viktor Frankl talks about, that we as humans have a choice. But in order to have that choice, we have to talk about things we can't, we have to be able to talk about these things. And you can't talk about what you can't see. And so we're going to start getting some language to see those things. And we're going to start off with a story. And this is called the Bob and Lucy story. It comes in 3 parts. The first part is from the perspective of Bob. And I want to tell you about Bob. Bob is a good guy. He's an accountant. He likes things orderly. He likes spreadsheets. He loves it. He goes to church on Sunday and goes to Boy Scouts with his kids on Saturday. And the rest of the week he works 9 to 5. But he's such a good accountant that they made him the head of the University of Pennsylvania Hospital, the first hospital in the United States. And the hospital was in trouble, but because he was such a great accountant, he saved the hospital. And he was so proud of it, he wants to give us a tour of the hospital. And so all of us and our families, we're getting a tour of the hospital, and Bob's excited. We're meeting the people. Everyone loves him. Bob's a good guy. You'd like him as a neighbor. That's the point of this story. Everybody in this story are good people. And Bob's telling us a story, and he's taking us to the hospital. We're meeting people. We go down some stairs. We go by the machine that goes ping. That's a Monty Python reference. And we go down through a hallway, and we end up in this hallway, and we come to the theater of orthopedic trauma surgery. For those of you, I'm sure you know, but in case you don't, they do things like fractures, bones, hips, joints, but they also do amputations. As we're walking down the hallway, we look over to a window, a viewing port, and we look through the window, and Dr. Lucy, just where you are right there, Dr. Lucy is amputating the leg of a 13-year-old girl. For me, as an observer, I will tell you the amputations are viscerally shocking to me. They feel like violence. If you don't know what you're looking at, when you see them, my whole body is like, please stop doing that. I want to stop that. There's a person unconscious and a limb is being removed. There's a part of my heart that's like, wait, let's just talk about this for a second. But if they're doing that, that means it's the best outcome of a bad situation. But Bob is a good dude, and Bob knows that the suicide rate of Dr. Lucy is quite high. So what Bob is going to do, because he's a good dude, is he's going to go back to his office, and he's going to call his psych and his social worker and his chaplain, and he's going to send some email to Dr. Lucy and her team, and he's going to arrange a resiliency workshop to help her process her trauma. Because for Bob, she must be experiencing trauma. Full stop. Because Bob's never smelled the smoke, and he's never been downrange, and he's never been in surgery. That's part 1. Here's part 2. You got to go back in time to the first humans. The first mythological humans are walking through as a group in the forest, and they come out of the forest onto a riverbank. And in front of them is a wide and raging, dangerous river full of all sorts of things, bad things. But on the far side of this river is a wasteland. It goes off into the distance of just savagery and desert and bad things. But on the banks of that side of the river are a bunch of refugees, broken and ill and injured, and they're too injured to make it across to safety. And Bob looks, the early Bobs of the world, they look at that river and they go, I can't cross that river, I'll die. I don't have the skills to cross that river. I can't help those people. I won't be able to get across the river. But the Dr. Lucy's and others, they say, if I do not try to cross the river, I know I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if I could have helped and didn't. So I'm going to try, knowing the consequences. And so they swim the river. Some make it, some get swept down river, some get swept under the river. But some make it across, many make it across. And they begin working on those refugees, fixing them and curing them. And they start building platforms to get them across the river back to Bob. And Bob goes, when they get here, they're going to need food and shelter and water. So I'm going to build a town. I'm going to build a town and a village and all the things that will help them remain safe and secure while they go off and do that. And then one day, while the Lucys on the other side of the river are working on those patients, they look off into the distance, into the wilderness, and they see darkness coming, teeth and claw and death coming towards them, and in overwhelming numbers. And they know that they will not be able to get enough of the refugees across in time, but they're going to stay and help anyway because they know the cost. But amongst the Lucys, there's another group, a group that have been building the rafts and getting food and creating bandages. And that group looks in the distance, the darkness, and then a sinister kind of smile gets on their face. And that group has found a purpose for themselves, and that's the unnamed warriors. And they rise up in ones and twos and then in groups, and they start moving towards the darkness. They reach down, they pick up rocks and sticks. They begin to walk in ones and twos and in groups, and then finally there's a whole horde of them. And then they start to run and they start to sing, because that is their purpose and that is what they do. And that war has been going on from then until now. That's part 2. Now part 3, Dr. Lucy's story. When Bob walked by to look in that window, Dr. Lucy was having a bunch of things going on. You see, Dr. Lucy 20 years ago knew that if she was going to be a trauma surgeon, she knew that not everybody that came to her would survive. And she could either come to terms with that or let it destroy her. So she recognized that some children that come to the hospital don't leave the hospital. Some adults who come to the hospital don't leave the hospital. That is the nature of life. There will be suffering, there will be death, but she can be a helper. And she has decided to focus on the helping and not on the loss. And so that day, that girl came in a year before dying, and they spent a year saving that girl's life, but they couldn't save the leg. And the girl herself at 13 was like, just take the leg. Oh, it's never coming back. I want to go to prom. I want my life back. So Dr. Lucy, in meeting with the family, made some hard decisions. Dr. Lucy is super proud of herself that day. That day is a great day because she's giving a girl her life back. She gets to go and have a full life. Yes, she won't have a leg, but she will have a life. And so she's excited. What's hurting Dr. Lucy is that after this surgery, she's going to have to go return 25 emails about resiliency. She's going to have to go to a workshop that's run by people that have never been downrange about how she is broken and she is a victim and she doesn't understand and she doesn't feel any of those things because she chose to cross the river. She chose to swim across the river. What's breaking Dr. Lucy is that about 6 months ago, Bob took away her coffee pot because they had to save some money to save the hospital. And what she really just wants is her coffee pot back. And she wants to go to less resiliency workshops, right? The problem is if I walk into Bob's office and Bob says, I need to help Dr. Lucy, and I was like, absolutely, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give her back her coffee pot. Bob's going to lose his mind. He's like, you're telling me that someone cut off a person's leg and the solution to that problem is coffee? And I was like, yes, it is. And the problem is that in and of itself, that story, the reason I'm telling you that is that Bob is necessary in the world. We have to get the hospital to run. But to expect that Bob understands your life is unfair to Bob and unfair to you. And the second reason is because Dr. Lucy one day will have her bad day. It wasn't that day, but it will come. And when she does have that day, if she goes to a place where people are like, oh, you poor dear, you're broken, but now you're injured for life, right? That's not good either. What Lucy needs to do is find her tribe to be able to tell her story and say, I had a bad day today, from people who look in her eye and go, I understand. So let's figure out a way to make meaning of this. The Bob and Lucy story I'm telling you because it's a framework for the rest of this conversation. It's a way for us to think about these other principles because it's about identity. It's about understanding that you are not crazy, that you've chosen to live in what's called the extraordinary world. You live in the normal world, but you work in the extraordinary world. And you have to take ownership of that because you have chosen, it was your choice to choose what we call the hard path. The path that will require you to make life and death decisions to be around sorrow and suffering. And you can let it destroy you or you can take ownership of it. You can turn it from sorrow to wisdom. but it is a choice. So the problem is that we live in different worlds, and often it's the transition between those worlds that are the ones that's causing us problems. So we spent the first 18 years of our lives in room number 1 in a classroom environment with all the classroom rules. And then one day you decide to go into the medical world and you're like, this is going to be great. You got 18 years of medical knowledge in your head academically. And then you cross into room 2 and all of a sudden your feedback is everything from they ignore you to they scream at you. They expect you to know everything that day. And if you screw it up, someone might die. No one teaches you that. Harvard doesn't teach you that. Stanford doesn't teach you that. That's something you have to figure out or it destroys you. And then in weeks or days or hours or months or whatever, you might get to your bad day. And on that bad day, regardless of what you do, you will not be fast enough or smart enough or talented enough to save that child. And you will be one of the groups that has to walk to those parents and say the thing that was most important to them in their life is never coming back again. And that will change you. It will change you. You will not be the same person that you were that morning. But the problem is that your family assumes that the Preston that left that morning is the same Preston that's coming home that night. And you've got to figure out a way to articulate those changes in a way that doesn't traumatize them and helps make you meaning of those experiences. Because those transitions, those in and out places, if we do it right, allows you to get to this room, allows you to be an elder that can educate the next generation, that can bring up the next generation and help people. But you have to start thinking about it in some different ways. And one of them is that work life isn't the exception to the rule. For you, it is the rule. That is the life. That is the world. And we need to develop a language for that to understand what that's about. To help you understand, we're a couple of words, right? Everyday world and criticality, right? This bridge is called liminality. It's a term betwixt and between two worlds, the normal world and the extraordinary world. And it's one that you travel every single day in your commute home and to work. And how well you transition across those will define who you are. So being thoughtful about it, intentional about your commute and how you talk about it, right? Because here's the truth, and this is very important for you to understand. In order for you to do your work, you have to compartmentalize your emotions, full stop. In order for you to go to tragic, sorrowful scenes and do good work, you have to be able to compartmentalize. But here's the bad news. The very thing that allows you to do your work is most likely the thing that will kill you. Because if you do not take that stuff out of that compartment within about 6 months they're studying now, it turns to toxicity. It goes toxic within you. It goes septic. So yes, you need to compartmentalize, but that compartment needs to have a swinging door. It goes in and then it comes back out. Right? And you need to have people around you that can help you do that. So to help you think about this, we're going to use a book called Hero with 1,000 Faces. It was written in 1948 by a guy named Joseph Campbell. And Joseph Campbell was a literature professor who studied old myths. And after 1948, he was teaching in the university and all the World War II veterans were coming in telling their stories. And he realized, man, that's a lot like the Odysseus or Gilgamesh or the Iliad or all these books from ancient times. And he realized that within us, there is a monomyth. There's a myth that goes through all of us. If you're interested in raising young women, there's another book called Women Who Run with Wolves. It was by one of Campbell's proteges. Now, fascinatingly enough, George Lucas, when he was writing Star Wars, used this book as the basis for that script. And now I'm going to use that to help you understand the myth. And if you're saying to me, hey, Preston, I've never seen Star Wars, please don't ever say that out loud again. That's just disappointing. I don't know what to say. I'm just sad inside. But also, if you're like, I want to watch it this weekend, I'm like, it's been since 1977. Your ship sailed on that. So here's what we're going to go. And we're going to start at a farm. And this farm can be Neo in the Matrix. It can be the Wizard of Oz, right? It could be any farm boy, right? A Harry Potter, right? An orphan. Luke Skywalker, an orphan. So Luke Skywalker is on a farm, moisture farm on Tatooine, but a farm. And all he really wants is a normal life. He wants to go fly fighter jets. That he has his life figured out. Except that these two droids go up and say, you have to rescue a princess, a call to action. We often fail when we're developing young people to give them a call to action, a why. Why are you doing this work? Not about being cool, but what is the significance? What are we being of service to, right? And he says, he does what's called refusal to call. He says, I'm just a farmer. I can't save a princess. So the droids take off and he's got to go get him. And he meets He meets Obi-Wan Kenobi or Dumbledore or Gandalf or any of those people, like Glinda the Good Witch, any of those elders, of which some of you in this room are elders. And if you need permission for me to give to you, you are elders. There, it's done. And so what ends up happening is the elder says, not only are you not a farmer, you're a Jedi. And he says, no, I'm not. I'm out of here. And he goes back, his aunt and uncle are burnt to death, so that's a problem. So he comes back and he goes into liminality. He sells all his earthly possessions, his land speeder, and he meets a Wookiee and a smuggler. And he says, okay, I'm just taking you guys to this planet and then I'm done. Right? Unfortunately, they get to the Death Star and he's like, oh my God, this is a lot, right? So what are we going to do? And he's like, well, I'm here and somebody has to save the princess. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to build a team. I'm going to build a team. I got this Wookiee, I got this smuggler, I got these droids, I got this mouthy princess. I think we can pull this off, except now we encounter Darth Vader, the epitome of evil, right? You've met the enemy. It's the worst possible thing. How can I do that? I know. I'm going to build some new skills and challenges. I got a lightsaber. I can levitate things with my head. This is pretty impressive. Except that now we're here. This whole thing, I started out as a farmer. Many of you have had this imposter syndrome moment where you're like, I'm just a farmer. I'm not so special. I'm not so brave. I'm not so great. But here you are. You're in the moment. And the moment's calling to you. And what are you going to do? And Luke Skywalker says, I guess I'm a Jedi. Let's go blow up the Death Star. Right? So they go blow up the Death Star, and then they fully embrace the transformation into this new identity, this new self. But eventually they have to come home. And here's what I can tell you about your experience that I don't even know most of you, but I can tell you this is true, that when you were in high school, you had a bunch of people that you loved. First drinks with, first kisses with, first mischief with. You all hated your parents, life sucked, but you all bonded, trauma bonded about puberty. It was bad, but you were all together in it. And then you went off to do this work. You went off to do all the things you're doing, and you couldn't wait to come back and tell them about your new life. You couldn't wait to come back and tell them all the cool things you're doing. But they stayed on the farm, you see. So when you came back to tell them about all the cool stuff, their eyes glazed over. They looked away. They wanted to change the conversation, and suddenly you had this moment where you realized, oh, I'm different now. I'm not normal anymore. They're normal. What I encourage you to think about is by taking the hero's journey, you are normal, but you're a different kind of normal. You live in the extraordinary world, and you must take responsibility for it because you have chosen to be the rescuer and no one's coming to rescue you, but you can help one another, right? And the first part of that is understanding sort of the rules of that. So now we're going to talk about residue. You see, this is the actor Tom Hardy. That's me, right? And the backstory here is if you're curious about this research, I'll tell you about both articles, but if you look up MCTI residue, this paper will come right up, the one I'm about to describe. So as I talked about this hero's journey and about the things that were being challenged by operators that work in extraordinary world, medicine, law enforcement, NASA, special operations, one of the things I realized is that it's hard sometimes to make full meaning of really tragic events. And so one day I get invited to a Wounded Warriors event, and the actor Tom Hardy is there. And the actor Tom Hardy, unknowns to me, had been reading some of my research and wanted to talk to me. And so I went up to talk to him, incredibly nice guy, and he asked me, hey Preston, why didn't you talk about residue? And I said, I've never heard this term before, sir. What do you mean? And he says, and this is Tom Hardy talking. You're going to have to really use your imagination here. Tom Hardy's a very good looking fella. And I don't do accents, so you got to use your imagination. But Tom Hardy says, Preston, I'm a method actor. So when I played Bane in Batman, Bane is a psychopath. I became, for 6 months or a year, a psychopath. I thought in violent ways. I dreamt, I spoke like that. But it's not me. It's counter to my own morality. But I had to become that person to be a compelling actor. But at the end of that experience, at the end of that movie, I had to take all of that residue, all that toxicity of that person, that vile person, and I have to turn it into the fuel for my next movie. Because if my next movie is Abraham Lincoln, and I come in and I'm like 77, no one will believe I'm Abraham Lincoln. And not only that, but that residue will slowly clog me up. It'll fill up my soul and my veins and my lungs until it's hard to breathe anymore, until the weight of it is just constantly pressing me down, and it feels like a life sentence of pain that I'll never be able to escape. And as Tom Hardy is telling me this story, and I've had a lot of bad days myself in my own career, all I'm thinking to myself is, Preston, don't cry in front of Tom Hardy. Because I know exactly what he's talking about. I know exactly what he's talking about, and so do you. And as I looked around the room at all these assassins that I'm surrounded by, these savages, and I'm realizing there's water in their eyes too, and they understand it as well. And so we spent a year on the residue project, and we wrote up residue. And all it is this. Residue is a substance that memory leaves behind. Do I have it here? Yep. Memories leave behind. It either becomes the fuel that builds your character or the tar that clogs your soul, but it is your choice. These experiences, even death, right, are a privilege. And I know they feel sometimes horrific, but it's also that you were there trying to help. And if you can place yourself in a place where you realize that you're contributing to the good and that you shouldn't be destroyed by it or feel guilty by it or anything else, but rather be fulfilled by it and take that suffering of others and make it wisdom, right? Make it so it teaches you something, so you're better for the next one, right? Because people will die, people will suffer, but what we're lucky enough to have is people like you that have dedicated their lives to trying to help. And that's what I would want, yeah? And so a couple of things that I want you to think about residue is really at this stage in your life, checking time here, yeah, there's a couple of things I want you to pay attention to. One, and this one's gonna sound obvious, but your family. And the reason is, and this is the trick it took me a long time to figure out with my wife. My wife's a teacher of young kids, so I couldn't come in and talk to her about body parts. It would be traumatic for her. And so a chaplain once said to me, hey Preston, you don't have to. You just come in and say, today I'm sad, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I'm disappointed in myself, I'm just full of rage because this is unfair, it seems unjust. She understands all that. She can still love you and still help you, and together you can grow and figure it out together. You can talk about your emotions without talking about the details. And your family is the ones that on your bad day, they've seen you in your underwear and they've seen you throwing up and they still love you. So they're the ones most likely to come to your aid and keep you alive until you can find the light again. The second thing is you should have a third thing. And here's why. If you only have work or family, you only have two of those things, if you lose one, you're likely to lose the other. That's the statistics on that. So you get a third thing. And here's the rules of the third thing. It's got to be something that you're a beginner at. And in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert minds, there are few. That's a Basho quote. And the idea being that being a beginner again with another group of people, right, in a rugby club or a chess club or ballroom dancing. My wife and I, one of my best memories is every year we try to learn something new together, right? The act of being beginners together. And our year learning ballroom dancing is one of my favorite years. We got kicked out of 2 studios because we couldn't stop giggling. And to me, that was worth every cent, right? I'm a terrible ballroom dancer. We did not learn dancing, but we had a wonderful time. And that idea of being with other people that only care that you're a good third baseman on the softball team matters because it gives you permission to have a different identity than just being rescuer or spouse. The last one is this, wilderness. Wilderness is good for you. Being outside, just taking a walk, breathing deep air, being in fresh sunlight. Just take 15 minutes a day and be outside. There's a lot of research on it. I don't understand all of it. I just know it's true. All right? So that is residue. You chose the hard path. You're going to have experiences. You have to take responsibility for those experiences. And the big reason why isn't so much just about you anymore, because some of you have some gray in your hair. And that means that your subordinates are looking more than they're listening. They're watching you. And if your solution to your sorrows is whiskey, it's not good, and it doesn't pass on sustainable traits. So be vulnerable, not for yourself, but for them. It'll be good for you and good for the world. So we talked about this, and now we're going to talk about this. So this is the final sort of exercise for today. It's going to require some group participation, but I promised there'll be no hugging or singing. This is the Cleveland Clinic. And the Cleveland Clinic had me come out, a few years ago because of the following problem. You all know this better than I do, but right here sits a circulating nurse, and inside of the bubble is a scrub nurse. And what was happening was, in order to become a scrub nurse at the Cleveland Clinic, you have to spend some time as a circulating nurse. The problem is they're having high attrition of circulating nurses. And they did a year-long study, blue ribbon study, smartest people in the world came to this study to figure out what was causing the attrition of these circulating nurses. And I know that you weren't on that commission, but what do you think the reason is? Lack of control? Yeah, doctors are jerks. That was a year-long study. Summary, doctors are jerks. So they decided they were going to invest $1 million to teach doctors empathy. Yeah, I giggled too, right? So they said, before we do that, can you come in and validate our research? And I said, I'll give it a shot. So I came in and I stood in this corner for 9 hours. And the way it works is there's going to be 3 surgeries, 3 hours apiece, and 3 hours break, 3 hours break, 3 hours break. And my job was to come in and just see how the team's responding. And what's interesting about this is that the first hour of the surgery is routine, just by the books, SOP, standardized, making the donuts. And then they turn the heart off and the heart-lung machine comes on, and then they have an hour to solve whatever problems are in there that they haven't seen on imagery or that they make a mistake, whatever, because at about the hour mark, the likelihood of blood clots in the brain go way up on the heart-lung machine. So they got to stop that surgery after an hour, right? And then they turn the heart back on and they got an hour of just normal routine prep. So I'm there watching this cycle, right? And the first hour is this. This is what I'm hearing from the team, right? Remember why I'm there. I love you. I'm so glad that you're here. Man, I love working on this team. Hey, do you guys want to hang out this weekend? It's like that. It's the nicest working environment I've ever been in. And I'm like, oh, they're performing for me. They know that there's a researcher observing, so they had a meeting and they're all pretending to like one another. That's what's really happening. I can wait them out though. 9 hours is a long time, right? So I'm gonna wait them out, right? So the first surgery happens and the second surgery comes in and the anesthesiologist, taking me forever to be able to pronounce that, by the way, comes in and starts to put the patient under, right? Starts to put the patient under. And I'm right there and these doors open up. And in walks the head of the hospital who heard I was doing research, had read some of my documents, and wanted to talk to me. Now, what you need to know about me, this is very important. When I study teams around the world, whether it's in a shoot house or a burn building or surgery, my job is to sit by the wall and disappear, to not interfere, to not distract, to not cause problems. My job is to not be a problem. Normally, I would never have a conversation with somebody in this environment, but he runs the place. I'm a guest in his house. He knows the rules better than I do. So I'm like awkward, and I can't tell him, sir, get out of here. He runs the place. So I'm in this awkward place. So I'm answering his questions. And then the anesthesiologist does this, and I want you to pay attention to this, right? And I'm gonna curse, I apologize. Anesthesiologist working on the patient does this. Steps away, and he goes, hey, Preston, and I look up, startled like a deer, and he goes, can you dial the volume down on your voice just a bit? We're still putting the patient under, right? It was the nicest shut the fuck up I've ever gotten in my life, okay? What do you think, just call it out, what do you think emotions I'm feeling as a person who's prideful in their work? What emotions do you think I'm feeling right then? Embarrassment, shame, right? The 12-year-old in me is angry at this guy. My grandmother's dead, is scolding me not to pick on a surgeon. There's a lot going on in my brain, right? So I'm in what's called the toilet bowl spiral of shame and embarrassment. I'm folding in on myself. However, I've been working with savages like you guys for a while, so I have what's called a thick skin. So I get myself together, and I'm like, Preston, we'll sort it out later. Just get it together, end this discussion, it's all good. But do you see the problem? Why am I in the room? Why am I there? Because doctors are jerks, right? Except that doctor wasn't a jerk. And here's the other problem. The problem wasn't the transmission of the information, it was the reception of the information. You see, I've had the luxury to work with some of the leading authorities in the world on leadership. For example, like Dr. Mike Useem, who's sitting right there, who is the head of the leadership program at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, and also my mentor for about 10 years. I'm saying this mostly just to embarrass him, but just because he did for me for many, many years. But the thing is that I have been to many workshops on how to give feedback. I have never been to a workshop on how to receive feedback. And suddenly I'm like, oh my gosh. So for the next 6 hours, I become the creepiest researcher in the world while I'm studying micro-expressions on the nurses' faces. So I'm like this guy staring intently at each of your faces for the next 6 hours. So probably distracting, but every time the surgeon says, hey, hand me the tool, not that tool, the other tool, that same expression that I had when he told me, hey, dial down, happened on their face every time. And I was like, oh my gosh. So we developed a protocol that's now being adopted at some universities around the world. And I'm gonna walk you through it, and this is where we're gonna do some exercises. There's 3 exercises, we're gonna do them rather quickly, but you'll get the thing, you'll get the idea. You can look it up, but you can also use this with your new folks. Remember, we're now in a world where we're no longer working as much with intact teams, people you work with long periods of time. We're now also working with tactical swarms, people that will swarm together that you haven't worked with before. And you don't know if they're Bobs or Lucy's. So you have to account for both. So the first scenario is this. And you can talk to the person next to you. I'll give you about a minute. Basically, you want to go into your boss's office on Monday, and you want to have a conversation about your future, right? And all you want to do is get some good advice, and you want to build rapport. But your boss is a smart woman, so she says, send me your 5 principles of routine communication, courtesy, active listening, that sort of thing. So take a moment and come up with a couple of them with the person next to you. Just do that now. What are your 5 rules for routine communication? Okay, what do you got? Do you got things that look like, oh yeah, what do you got? Throw out some words. Eye contact. Active listening. Mutual respect. Tone. Specificity. Anybody have honesty? Yes, here's what's great about that. I think your kids are ugly. Totally honest. But here's the thing, I know what you meant, but you see, we've all had people in our life, we've all had people, I don't, by the way, I've never met, I'm sure they're beautiful. We've all had people in our life that were like, what, I just told the truth. Yeah, and you burnt the place down, like you're not helpful. So I think what we mean by honesty is respectful candor. You want the truth, but you want it in a way people can hear it, right? So what the teams came up with is intention, courtesy, active listening, empathy, etc. They also came up with some body mechanics. Remember, communication is both verbal and nonverbal, right? So behavior was motive. That simply means those of you with killed faces on, just a reminder, right? That smiling every once in a while is good for you, right? So those of you who aren't aware of that. Also, for some of you who are used to being in a uniform, when you're not in uniform, small talk is how people know you're not a pedophile. So if you could just learn to just be a little chatty, it's going to help you and your family a lot. So voice modulated, body language is engaged, volume is conversational, intent is pretty collaborative, pretty straightforward, yeah? So now we're going to go to your world. Next scenario, second scenario, next week, you're going to come to a traffic accident. There's going to be kids trapped in a vehicle. You have 300 seconds left to get those kids out of a vehicle, but the only people you have to work with are people of Bob's in the world, the ordinary people, the librarians and the accountants, right? But I have a magic device. I can send them your 5 principles of critical communication a week ahead of time. So what are your 5 principles for communicating in a critical environment? Go now. Do that now. All right, I'm gonna start here because this is your world. So shout some out. Direct, concise, clear. It's almost like we read this from a manual. Trust. Calm. What was that one? I'm not getting that word. Calm. Sorry. I think it's yeah. Calm. I'm with you. Yeah. Have to remain calm so you don't freak them out. All right. Here's what the teams came up with: brevity, directive, projective, assertive, unemotional, or calm. Yeah. And here's the body language. You want to be assertive, right? You want them to know that you're in charge. Your affect, you want to be flat. You don't want to be emotional. Your body language is knife hands, like we will go here, then we will go here. Your volume is projective, and your intent is directive. Yeah? All that makes sense? Everybody with me so far? Okay, final scenario. We're going to do this as a group. You're in the supermarket. Celine Dion is playing on the music. You have a beverage of your choice in your hand. Somebody just called you attractive. There is joy in your heart. Some of you will have to imagine this, but there's joy in your heart. Okay, just picture a time where that happened. Go there, okay? Joy in your heart. And then all of a sudden, someone starts talking to you like this. Quickly label what you think they are. Asshole. What else? Jerk. Aggressive. Doctor. Well played. Well played. But you understand it's not good, right? All of the things, all the attributes we just heard, not good. So here's the question, and this is very important. This is what we're all building towards. How does your team know when you move from routine to critical? And I'm going to answer it for you, okay? And you think about it for a moment, but here it is. You're going to say, well, Preston, my tone changes, my volume changes, my body language changes, right? The context changes. Do you know how long it takes to learn all those things? About 6 months. It takes about 6 months for me to learn that you're not a jerk, you've just gone into criticality. So what you're doing with new people, if you don't train them, is you're losing 6 months. Sorry, everybody, we're just gonna switch up here. What's happening is that you're gonna be losing about 6 months with every new employee. And if you're working on tactical swarms, that means that you're losing a lot of people, that your voice isn't being heard because they don't understand that you're not being a jerk, that you're just speaking clearly. So what we found was that they don't understand the difference between role and information. They don't understand the difference between personal attack and just to be in communication. So in other words, in routine communication, if you hand me a tool and I say, no, not that tool, the other tool, I'm being rude. In routine communication, I'm being rude. But in critical communication, if I say not that tool, the other tool, I'm projecting my voice for clarity. And what do I want? I want the other tool. When we did this exercises with nurses, we went back to the Cleveland Clinic, we had nurses literally say to us, in the moment when we did the exercise I just did with you, go, oh, they just wanted the other tool. Do you see what I mean? Because they had come from wards, they had come from the routine world. This was their first step onto the hero's journey. They had never been through liminality. They had never been in a critical world. They had never understood what it was to cross the river. This was their first time, but they need elders. They need Obi-Wan Kenobis and Gandalfs. And instead of doing that, everyone was like, you should figure it out, kid. I was beat as a child. You should get beat as a child. The truth is, the new generation was not going to work out that way. We will see high attrition. We have to take responsibility for helping people understand and make meaning of the extraordinary world. That's not only for us, but how we role model for the next generation, the responsibility we take for the next generation. What I'm going to do in a final comment, and then I'll open up to any questions, is this. Just a note on the next generation. In 1914 to World War I happened. Most of the fighting age males went to France, and many of them died. Immediately after that war was the Spanish influenza that wiped out something like 20, some huge swath of the world's population, which meant that entire interwar generation was raised by grieving grandparents and single moms in an austere post-pandemic, post-war environment. And they did what all humans do. They protected the one thing they still had, which is their children, which meant no running, no swimming, no climbing of trees, because they were precious to them. And when the war started up, or when those kids start to turn 16 or 17 or 18 and join this Britain, join the family business, merchant marines, navy, fishing, they started to die of things like exposure and dehydration because they didn't do it growing up. And everyone's like, this soft generation, they're all idiots. Well, a group of elders said, well, hold on, that's not right. And so it was in the startup in 1938, at the startup of the war, two things happened. The start of a group called Outward Bound, run by a guy named Kurt Hahn, and the Duke of Edinburgh Awards. And it started this way. They went down to the coast of Britain, and they got a bunch of these soft high school students, the ones that had been protected all their lives, and they took them down to the docks, and they put them in front of a pulling boat. It's a long boat with oars, very difficult work. And they told them the following story. They said, listen, here's the deal. In a few hours, a merchant marine ship will be passing by here, but we know that German U-boats are out there, and there's a high likelihood they're going to get shot. They're going to get sunk, which means that we'll have our cousins and our uncles and our family members and our neighbors in the water, and they have 4 hours to live unless we get to them, and we're the only ones near enough to do it. But we don't have enough people to row. You know what all these soft kids said? All these kids that everyone said that they're weak and they don't understand? They said, why are you talking to us? Why aren't we rowing? And that was a generation that fought and won World War II. The generation today isn't weak. They just don't know what they don't know. It's up to us to develop them. It's up to give them new habits so they can sustain themselves as they choose the hard path, as they choose to go into the extraordinary world. Because we need as many of them as we can get. And we need them to become grandparents, and we need them to be able to pursue their happiness. It's their unalienable right. Thank you very much. Any questions? We can, yeah, and then we can do questions. I think we've got a minute or two. Any questions or comments? It was all pretty heavy, so it may not be. Okay. Sir? Sir? Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody.